We budget because budgets give us security. It assures us that every expense we can predict, we already have covered. Rent? Got it. Bills? Already covered. Groceries? Try to phase me. But what about when life just kinda happens? Our expenses are not always predictable. No matter how good you are with money or how good you are at budgeting, you couldn't possibly have the foresight to know little Sally's gonna break her arm 3 months from now. And you're going to get a speeding ticket by the end of the week. So, buckle up. Literally. You could make it too. And if you do have the ability to see into the future, please leave a comment below so we can chat. I've always wanted to be sidekick. So the question is, how do we prepare ourselves for those unexpected expenses? Or make sure that we don't go into future debt? Well, there are actually a few different routes to get you there. An emergency fund and building your sinking funds. Or, as we like to call them, your true expenses. Let's explore both of these concepts, starting with the emergency fund first. An emergency fund is exactly what it sounds like. It's a stash of backup cash, your safety net. It's not necessarily dedicated to any one thing in particular, except just that, emergencies. That, oh shoot, the dishwasher just met its demise and we have family coming for the holidays next week, kind of a safety net. Or the, woo boy, my neighbor's baseball just came flying through the living room window, kind of a safety net. We can't quite put a specific name to it, but all those events that we essentially never could have predicted. It is brilliant, it is wise, we all need emergency fund cash. But there are a few muddier areas when it comes to having just a plain old emergency fund. First off, how much do you put in there? 500? 1,000? 5,000? 10,000? It's hard to know what a truly adequate emergency fund really is. And that's okay. The good news is you know your life, and so that ball is in your court. $1,000 may be enough for you to feel confidently prepared for any curveballs that may come your way, kind of like the literal curveball that flew through your living room window, while some of you may need the comfort of having much more tucked away. The other con when it comes to emergency funds is that sometimes it's hard for us to know when something qualifies as an emergency. Is it only for those catastrophic events where a tree crashes through the roof? Or could it be used to buy a new water heater when the old one finally kicks the bucket? Maybe you're out of work for 3 weeks with an injured back. Could that money help you pay for grocery deliveries and a dog walker? Should I dip into it to replace a few crushed car parts after a nasty fender bender? Well, depends. Some of these are true emergencies, while others really aren't emergencies when you think about it. You knew the water heater was 12 years old when you moved in 5 years ago. So should it dying be an actual emergency, or is that something we technically did know to be preparing for? Obviously, no one plans to get in a car accident, but we knew our car would face some wear and tear over the next few years, right? Were we preparing for that? Well, that leads to the second route of preparing ourselves for those less predictable costs, building your true expenses. Or, as you may more commonly know them, your sinking funds. We call them true expenses because, truly, they are our expenses. We just don't think of them as our expenses because they're not monthly bills, they're not as predictable, they're kind of the here and there expenses, and they're often forgotten. And you know what that means. We end up borrowing money to pay for them. Dang it. There are two types of true expenses, the predictable and the unpredictable. Some examples of predictable true expenses are your annual auto insurance premium, your HOA fees, the kids' summer camp, or maybe a Christmas fund goal that you set for yourself every year. Heck, even YNAB is a predictable true expense. You only have to pay for your subscription once a year, but that bad boy can really sneak up on you if you're not preparing for it. Then there are also your unpredictable true expenses. You probably know they're coming someday, but you don't know how often they'll happen or how much those expenses will cost when they occur. Some examples of these are things like auto maintenance, pet sitting or boarding your pet when you need to go away, vet bills, even building up a clothing category if you're not someone who ever thinks to buy new clothes. I do not personally know what that is like. What true expenses really are is future debt prevention. If every month you're putting away a little money for car repairs, then when your car finally hits a snare in the road, literally or figuratively, you'll actually have some, if not all, of the money specifically set aside for this incident. Bring it on, bring it on. Well, hey now, that's no longer an emergency anymore, is it? The car needed fixing and you've been saving money for this very event all year long, if not longer. Even if you can only cover half the cost of the repair. That's huge. When you're setting the money aside ahead of time, there's way less need to grab that credit card in a pinch, because technically, there is no pinch. Yes, summer camp is expensive, but it doesn't feel quite so lofty of a cost when you're putting money aside for summer camp all year long. So the question you all have running through your heads right now is, well, which one's better? The emergency fund or building your true expenses? Well, let me blow your mind for a second here. An emergency fund actually is a true expense. Yes, both are amazing because they're both gifts to your future self, ways that you're caring for future you right now. If I can be setting aside money for dog boarding every month, when I do end up needing to board my dog Julep, I will be absolutely stress-free about where that money's gonna come from, even if I were only able to fund it halfway. And likewise, when that baseball comes flying through the living room window, I don't need to worry about having to steal from my Christmas fund because a baseball through a window is absolutely an unpredictable emergency that will need fixing right now. And guess what? We have a category for that. Emergency fund, here we come. Now is your time to shine. For those of you who do use YNAB, when you start a new budget, YNAB automatically adds default true expense categories for you to fill out. However, the beauty of YNAB is that everything is completely customizable. Make it your own, make it fit your life. Your budget can do whatever you need it to. And I can hear the thoughts now. Well, what happens when I lose my job? Am I just gonna scrape up all the extra money from my true expenses and emergency fund and reverse all the progress I've made? And to that, I would say, maybe. Maybe or maybe not. But if you do end up having to do that, you will be so glad that you had that cash to reprioritize. But no fear, because next week we're gonna explore what it looks like to level up even one more notch and really get ahead in your money. Not just by funding true expenses, but by beginning the process of funding future months right now. That being said, thank you for joining me today, and we will see you next week. For grocery deliveries and a dog walker when you're out of work for, ow, my elbow. Heck, even YNAB is a predictable chalk spot.